Henry was born on January 31st, 1939 in South Dakota. Henry's family moved around a lot in his younger days. Henry was the youngest of two boys and struggled to deal with an overbearing mother. When Henry was just 5 years old, he discovered a pair of high heels in a junkyard. When his mother found out about this, she took the shoes away and destroyed them. This only made Henry's fetish for wearing women's shoes grow stronger. He later started breaking into houses to steal women's underwear. As Henry grew older, his thoughts became darker and darker, and he began to act on them. He threatened a girl with a knife when he was just 17 years old. He forced her to take off her clothes. He was later caught and sentenced to some time in an Oregon psychiatric ward, but he was still allowed to attend school during the day. After high school, Henry became a technician, and at the age of 22, Henry got married and moved to Oregon and had 2 kids. It seemed as if Henry had changed his life around, but he continued his dark way of thinking and once again started breaking into homes to steal women's underwear. In May of 1967, Henry attacked a woman, following her home and then raping her. He choked her until she passed away, and then she left. Later on January 26, 1968, Henry attacked Linda Lawson, a saleswoman that Henry had tricked into believing that he was interested in buying. As she entered the home, Henry admitted that he hit her in the head and strangled her to death. After her death, Henry kept her body, dressing it up in women's underwear. Henry also removed one of her feet so that he can keep them on high-heeled shoes from his collection. He later dumped the body. That November, Jan Whitney was driving home from Thanksgiving dinner when her car broke down. Henry stopped and offered his help, but instead he strangled her and had sexual relations with her body. Henry brought her body into his workshop and dressed it up and took photos. Henry liked to keep a body part of his victims, so he decided to take her breasts. The killing got worse the following year. Henry abducted a 19-year-old college student from a parking garage in March. He then took her to his house, where he sexually assaulted her and strangled her. He also took her breasts as a trophy. A little over a month later, he struck again. 22-year-old Linda, Henry kidnapped her from a shopping center and brought her back to his house, where she suffered the same fate as many before. When Henry was done, he dumped her body in a river. A few weeks later, her body was found. Her body had been weighed down by a car part. Police took notes of the knot used to attach the car part to her body. A few days later, police found another body using the same strange knot. During the course of the investigation, police interviewed students at the local college about the murders. A few female students reported receiving strange phone calls from an individual claiming to be a Vietnam veteran looking for a hookup. One of these female students actually went out with the individual, and she reported that he was a heavy-set man with freckles and light hair. During their date, the man made a reference to a dead body down in the river and asked if he could take her home and strangle her. Police told her to call them if the man ever attempted to make contact with her again. A few days later, the man, who was in fact Henry, arranged a date with the female student for a second time. Instead of his date, Henry found the police waiting for him when he arrived. They interviewed Henry and decided to investigate him further as a possible suspect. After a young woman he previously attempted to abduct identified him, the police were able to get a search warrant for his home. There, they found a wealth of evidence, including nylon rope and Henry's photos of the victims. During an interrogation, Henry admitted to the 4 murders as well as several other assaults and attempted abductions. He was first charged with the Sally and Sprinkle murders. Henry tried to avoid punishment by claiming he was not guilty by reason of insanity. The mental health experts who examined him, however, determined that he was legally sane. Henry knew what he was doing was wrong and never showed any signs of remorse for his actions. Henry eventually pled guilty to the murders of Sally, Sprinkle, and Whitney. He was never tried for the Slauson's murder, since nobody had ever been found. For these crimes, he received 3 consecutive life sentences with the possibility of parole. His wife divorced him in 1970 and left the state with their 2 children. She has since changed her name. Henry died of natural causes on March 28, 2006.